Picture this. It's 1964, and the U.S. government decides to execute a colossal labor policy. The ultimate goal? Instantly boost wages for domestic workers. And their master plan to do this was actually by deliberately shrinking the workforce. It was a massive, emotionally charged gamble. Now, answer this in your own head. If you suddenly kick out 500,000 foreign workers, local wages are going to skyrocket, right? I mean, it feels like basic math. Supply and demand. You slash the labor supply, so locals should rush in to fill the empty jobs and wages should shoot to the moon. It's just common sense. But as you'll see in this explainer, common sense is about to get completely dismantled. Get ready for a hard reality check. Back in 1961, politicians promised huge raises and tens of thousands of shiny new local jobs. But a totally rigorous economic paper by Clemens, Lewis, and Postel reveals the undeniable truth. The hard data shows absolutely zero positive effect. No wage increase, no employment boom, literally nothing. And to really grasp this, we have to look at the sheer scale. 500,000. That is how many Mexican Bracero workers were excluded. This was not some minor bureaucratic policy tweak. It was a colossal shock to the system. In some states, a full third of the seasonal workforce was just erased overnight.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, the big immigration myth.
Which brings us to Section 2, data delivers a hard slap. So the researchers behind this paper basically treated history like a giant, merciless laboratory. Now, not all states actually used Bracero workers, so they grouped states by their exposure. Group 1 had high exposure, meaning over 20% of their workforce was foreign. Group 2 had low exposure. And Group 3? That was the perfect control group, zero exposure. These were states that never had these workers to begin with. And here is the ultimate face slap. When you track farm wages right before and right after the 1964 exclusion, the high exposure states obviously lost massive amounts of workers, while the zero exposure states lost none. But the result? The wage lines move in perfect harmony. Wages grew at the exact same rate everywhere. This massive labor shock did absolutely nothing to wages. The researchers' conclusion is completely blunt and totally impartial. They state, we fail to reject the hypothesis that exclusion did not affect U.S. agricultural wages. In economic speak, that basically means the data totally, completely destroyed the political narrative. The promises made were pure fiction. Let's turn to Section 3, the missing jobs mystery. Okay, so wages didn't go up, but what about employment? I mean, 500,000 workers gone has to mean 500,000 empty jobs, right? Well, wrong. If you track domestic workers right as the exclusion hits, the employment line stays completely, totally flat. There's no spike, no sudden surge of local hiring. The counterintuitive truth here is just undeniable. The locals didn't take the jobs. Even with massive government recruitment campaigns, they failed entirely. American workers absolutely did not rush into the fields, and the empty jobs, well, they just stayed empty. And that leads to a huge question in Section 4, rise of the machines. Seriously, if wages didn't rise and locals didn't want the work, how did the crops actually get picked? Well, here are the hidden mechanics that politicians entirely missed. Step 1, the cheap labor leaves. Step 2, farmers flat out refuse to pay massive wage hikes. Step 3, farmers buy machines instead. And Step 4, the work gets automated, meaning those potential jobs for locals vanish entirely. The data really just screams the truth here. Look at tomato, cotton, and sugar beet farms. Right at that exclusion line, mechanization absolutely skyrockets. Before 1964, barely any tomatoes are machine harvested. 5 years later, nearly 100% of California's processing tomatoes were being picked by machines. Farmers didn't hire locals, you guys. They literally bought robots. But wait, what about crops that couldn't be mechanized yet? Things like strawberries or asparagus. Did farmers finally cave and pay locals more? Nope. They simply grew less. Or they switched their crops entirely to something they could mechanize. The ultimate result across the board was exactly zero new local jobs created. So what does this all mean? Let's look at Section 5, the ultimate economic truth. This incredibly rare, massive historical experiment reveals something we can call the automation lever. Basically, restricting the labor supply does not guarantee higher wages. What it actually does is rapidly accelerate the adoption of technology. Politicians think they're pushing a shiny button for higher wages, but in reality, they're slamming the button for automation.
Now, to be totally impartial, we have to look at the study's limitations. Its legacy is clear. It's a genius use of history with really rigorous control groups. But this was 1960s agriculture. Modern service economies or the tech industry might react completely differently. We can't definitively guarantee identical outcomes today.
So I'll leave you with this final question. If pulling the lever on labor supply just pushes the button on automation, what does that mean for today's labor policies? The next time you hear modern promises about restricting labor to boost wages, remember the tomatoes, remember the Braceros. The economy is a living, breathing ecosystem, and it adapts, often by cutting the human out entirely. Keep questioning the conventional wisdom.